أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم إني أعوذ بك أن أضل أو أضل أو أذل أو أذل أو أظلم أو أظلم أو أجهل أو يجهل علي. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اغفر وارحم واعف وتكرم وتجاوز عما تعلم إنك تعلم ما لا نعلم. اللهم آمين آمين آمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Last week we talked about, and the week before we took the examples of some great tafsirs done by our scholars, Imam al-Tabari, Ibn Kathir, Imam al-Baghawi, Imam al-Jawzi. And unfortunately, again, it is not the aim actually, it is not series of history of tafsir, but it is just an overview, so we have to skip a lot of information. There are actually other great tafsirs like Tafsir Imam al-Razi and Tafsir Ibn Atiyah, who is one of the great scholars, Andalusian scholars. So we have to skip this and to go to another type of tafsirs, which is those tafsirs based on fiqh, mainly the scholars, those who embarked on such projects. Their aim actually is to deal with fiqh issues primarily, not other things. And we do have three great examples of this. Actually, we have four, but we start with maybe the earliest one, which is Ahkam al-Quran. And usually, the title of these tafsirs, usually they adopt the title of Ahkam al-Quran, which is referring to the rulings of the Quran, which halal, haram, the five ahkam, you know them. So mainly is the mufassir here comes to the ayah or to the whole surah and started going through all the ahkam. They may touch on the theme of the surah, but mainly they need to go on depth on this. The first one who wrote on this, and one of the earliest actually works on this, is Imam al-Jassas, Abu Bakr al-Jassas. So if you are relying again on transliteration, is Jassas. So Imam Abu Bakr al-Jassas, who is actually one of the great Hanafi scholars, one of the earliest Hanafi scholars, one of the Usulis also, is a great such mind. And he wrote this book, Ahkam al-Quran, mainly to start tafsir based on the principles and the teaching of Abu Hanifa, radiallahu anhu, rahimahullah. Let me start first by giving a very brief, again, profile about Imam al-Jassas. And one of the issues with this Imam, that his name actually is the same name of other 5 great scholars. So students used to mix which al-Jassas we're talking about. So we have 5 great scholars with the same name, Abu Bakr al-Jassas, and they came from the same region, which is this region of Khurasan. Rahimahullah, he was born, he died actually in 370. We don't know exactly when he was born, but he died on 370 of Hijrah. When I was checking this and I was preparing this, I found even, we talked about the beginning, we talked about the main textbooks on Ulum al-Quran, and we said one of the main textbooks, contemporary one, is al-Zurqani, Imam al-Zurqani, which deals with Ulum al-Quran. He himself, rahimahullah, got confused on the name of Abu Bakr al-Jassas with different Abu Bakr al-Jassas. So Imam Abu Bakr al-Jassas died in 317. So some scholars said he was born actually in 315, but not for sure. They described him as an Imam al-Dhahabi. He said, كان رجلا تقيا. He was a pious man, so much so that when once he was offered the post of Qadi, a judge, a chief judge actually, he declined and he ran. And this is a practice among our scholars. He was described also by Imam al-Dhahabi as mujtahid fi masail al-fiqh. So, this category of fuqaha. So if someone is mujtahid, he is beyond actually the school of fiqh. So he can come to the conclusion of his own ahkam. So al-Dhahabi described him as mujtahid fi masail al-fiqh. He wrote a lot of books, mainly on usul al-fiqh and fiqh itself, but his main book, which is got much attention from scholars, is this one, Ahkam al-Quran, the rulings of the Quran, has been published many times and has been translated, part of it has been translated into English. The whole work has been translated into Urdu and into Farsi. Those who can speak Urdu and Farsi, they can access the Ahkam in just four volumes. So that's the first one, Ahkam al-Quran. And it is again mainly dealt with the Hanafi schools. Then the second one is Ahkam al-Quran, the same, by Al-Imam Ibn al-Arabi, Al-Qadi, Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi. This is the great judge and scholar, and the Andalusian scholar from Syria in Andalusia, now in Spain. He comes from a very knowledgeable family. They said his father, his grandfather, great-grandfather, his great-grandfather was judges in Cordoba and in Syria, in Andalusia. Again, you shouldn't mix between Al-Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi and another scholar with the same name. I was a great Sufi scholar, Ibn Arabi, without A-L. So you have Ibn Arabi, that's Sufi scholar. He wrote a lot of Sufism and philosophy. And we have Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi with Al. This is the judge, the Maliki scholar. He was born in 468 How do we know now? Because he comes from a family of knowledge, and his father recorded the exact date and time when Al-Qadi Abu Bakr was born. He was born after Al-Asr on Monday. He recorded everything because his father is a judge, his father is a scholar. So you have this practice. And he died, rahimahullah, in 543. From his early age, he was devoted actually his life to the Quran. His father actually devoted him to the knowledge. He memorized the Quran at the age of 9. As usual, so sometimes we said this many times, don't be surprised if you find 7, 8, 9. That was the norm. If you have someone who memorized at the age of 11 or 12, this is very late, usually. It's like nowadays, we memorize at the age of 13, 14, if we memorize, if. Yeah. And by the way, always brothers ask this question, can you give us good tips to memorize the Quran? I met, this is just, we open brackets here, but I relate to the Quran anyway. But I met one of the brothers at university from Uzbekistan, and he was young, actually he was 22 years old, and he was telling me how he memorized the Quran in just 1 year. He was telling me that he committed himself in 2022 to memorize a page a day. How? 10 minutes before Salat and 10 minutes after Salat. So 20 multiplied by 5, how many minutes? 100 minutes a day. He did this for 1 year, exactly for 1 year. 10 minutes before Salat, 10 minutes after Salah. So he takes his page, his part, and later on he said, then after 3 months, I could actually do 3 pages, not only 1 page. And I told him, how did you come up to this idea, which he finished in 1 year? And his hifz is amazing. I tested him. Great. But he said one of his shuyukh there in Uzbekistan so suggested that you take this time, so any time, like 10 minutes before Salah, 10 minutes after Salah. He said this, if you do this, if you practice this, then you cannot miss the barakah in time. Because the barakah, he said, he told him, to wait for Salah, that's a barakah. That's one of the blessings, yeah? This is what we have to make dua, yeah? When we're waiting for Salah, between Iqamah, between Dhuhr and Iqamah. So he said, take this opportunity to memorize the Quran. And you're going to get the blessing. If you don't get it in Fajr, you will get in Dhuhr. If not in Dhuhr, in Asr. If not in Asr, in Maghrib, in Isha. So make sure to commit yourself to these times, and you will finish the Quran, he told him, in less than 1 year. And he said, yes, I'll finish the Quran. So if you want to do this, Bismillah, yeah, go ahead, decide, start from tomorrow, do 10 minutes. Yeah, so we'll be back to Qadi ibn al-Arabi. He memorized at the age of 9, rahimahullah. Then spent his time reading and taking the knowledge. At that time, they used to start with Arabic. The Andalusians, by the way, is quite unique in their ways of learning. It's unique. They don't start by the Quran, they start by the language, by the Arabic language. And he himself, Ibn Khaldun, in his Muqaddimah, in his book, the history, he mentioned this. He said the Andalusians, in particular, in all the Muslim world, they used to start with the Arabic language, not with the Quran. And this is why you have this. Otherwise, Ibn al-Arabi, he should finish actually at the age of 7, not 9. Because he started with Arabic, and then they have to memorize some poetry, one of the scholars, he said they used to memorize 100,000 lines of poetry. So 100,000 lines of poetry. You're talking about maybe 5 volumes or 6 volumes of poetry. And then when they reach the age of 10, and then they shift to the Quran. So to give them a solid background in the Arabic language so they can understand the Quran. This is unique by only them they do this. So he finished the Qira'at by the age of 16. He finished all the Qira'at. He studied mathematics, astronomy, and they said he finished all the books, all the main textbooks that were taught at that time in astronomy. So he is actually an astronomist himself, rahimahullah. And then he started his journey, his rihla, and that was the custom. We've seen this with the history of hadith when we did this series last year, you have to remember. So he started his journey to take from scholars outside his city and outside the Andalus. So he traveled south to Algeria to a place called Bijaya. This is in the east of Algeria now. And he was one of the main 6 centers of knowledge at the time. So he took the most of knowledge that was in Bijaya, and then he moved to Tunisia, and then he moved to Cairo, and then Baghdad. And that was actually with his father. So he traveled, his father took him and he said, I go with you. His father was a minister, by the way. He was a judge, and he was a scholar, and in the meantime he was a minister. He was chief cabinet of the court of the Emir. So he rahimahullah, traveled to Al-Quds, Palestine, and there he delivered his first session on Tafsir. He said, under Qubbat Sakhra, you see the dome of the rock, under this dome, he delivered his first session on Tafsir when he was only 16 years old. So the scholar asked him to deliver this. He met Al-Ghazali, Abu Hamd Al-Ghazali, the great scholar, so he was one of his students, rahimahullah. And when he returned after, his father actually left him, and he returned alone. And then Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi back to Andalusia after 6 years. Alhamdulillah, he recorded all his rihla. So all what he did during his travel, he recorded this, and it is published, the whole rihla. When he back to Andalusia, all scholars, they came from all over the Andalus to take knowledge from him. One of his great students was Al-Qadi Iyad, the another great judge. So Ibn al-Arabi wrote his book after he wrote a tafsir. He wrote a tafsir, and he called this tafsir Anwar al-Fajr. Anwar al-Fajr, the lights of al-Fajr. And unfortunately, he lost the book. They said this Anwar al-Fajr was in more than 30 volumes nowadays. But it was lost during a calamity in Cordoba. He was accused of being against the ruler, and it was some political calamities. And the folks actually invaded his house, and he lost part of his library. One of his works, Anwar al-Fajr. And he was very depressed that he lost. You see, as a scholar, you know, you lose your work. Now, if you say the document and computer and you lose it, you know, you cannot sleep for maybe a week because it is important. Imagine that a work of years in 30 volumes. Now, there is no trace for this. From time to time, we hear scholars, we hear researchers saying, we found a part of this, but nothing happened. So he wrote Ahkam al-Quran. After he wrote Ahkam al-Quran only for the fiqh issues in the Quran. And mainly because he's Maliki, so he relied on his school, Maliki school. But Ibn al-Arabi was someone who's mujtahid also, and he was known always for going against his madhab, against his school. He's always, that's his mentality, is always to be fatwa, which is sometimes contradicting the opinion of the Maliki school that there is no zakah on vegetable, fruit and vegetable. There is no zakah. Because they consider it as business, so you take zakat from this as business, not as vegetable. When Abu Bakr al-Arabi used to give fatwa there, when he was a judge, he used to instruct people to give the zakat. And he said, here the Hanafis are better than us, and the Maliki. So he was, not only if you take his book, Ahkam al-Quran, you don't find only the Maliki opinions, but you find most of his opinions, even outside his school, which is the Maliki school. Then the following one, we see with another great Maliki scholar, who is Imam al-Qurtubi. Imam al-Qurtubi from Cordoba, in Andalusia. His book, it's mixed between Tafsir and Ahkam al-Quran. And same thing, the name is Ahkam al-Quran, and they usually refer to this as Tafsir al-Qurtubi, the Tafsir of al-Qurtubi. Al-Qurtubi, he used to live in Cordoba until the story of these cities started falling one after another one to the Spanish, what they call Reconquista, which is taking back the cities. So the Muslims lost the city in 633 of Hijrah. 633 of Hijrah. To have an idea, the last city in Al-Andalus was Granada, was formed actually in 895. 895. So if you take from 633 Qutba, and then you have Granada in 895, where officially the Islamic state in Andalusia gone. That's it. So officially, Muslims stayed there for 895 years. And if you get to, there is not much distance between Cordoba. So 2 hours by driving, and we can reach Cordoba. But we see what the Muslims actually suffered for 700, 800, so over 2 centuries, 2.5 centuries, they actually managed to stay there. So when the Muslims actually were defeated in Cordoba, Al-Imam al-Qurtubi, he decided to leave the whole of Andalusia, and he settled in Egypt. He settled in Al-Qahira, in Cairo, rahimahullah. And in Cairo, at that time, he met many Andalusian scholars. And he died there, rahimahullah. One of his great scholars in Egypt, one of the Andalusian Abu al-Abbas al-Qurtubi, great professor, great scholar, from his city, Abu al-Abbas al-Qurtubi. And you can see this, this scholar, historically, the Andalusian, when they visit Egypt, they usually start with Alexandria, and they usually stay there. And that was even the practice of those who come from North Africa, from Maghreb, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. They stay there. And the reason why, again, it's usually quite unique, because most of the time of the Egyptian land were actually Shafidis, but Alexandria was Maliki. So it was a hub of the Maliki schools. This is why everyone used to go there to Al-Iskandariya, Alexandria. He, rahimahullah, again, as Imam al-Zahabi described him, كان ورعا تقيا. He was a pious man, rahimahullah. He used to cry a lot, they said. And they said in Egypt he lived a life of sadness. And when they asked him, he said because what he saw in Cordoba, what the Spanish did for Muslims. And he said, I saw half of women as being raped and taken by the Spanish. So they said, in Qurtubi, according to one of his students, he said, I've never ever seen him smiling or laughing. And whenever he remembered his, and you can read Tafsir, and whenever he mentioned his city of Qurtuba, he said, أعادها الله دار إسلام. May Allah return Islam back to this city. Always that says, أعادها الله دار إسلام. Rahimahullah. And you'll find a number of anecdotes and stories in his tafsir referring to the experience that he lived, rahimahullah, when he left Qurtuba. كان لا يتكلم كثيرا unless it is tafsir or giving thoughts in knowledge. Otherwise, again, he's always silent. He doesn't talk too much. Rahimahullah ta'ala. So he wrote his book, الجامع لأحكام القرآن. That's the official title. الجامع لأحكام القرآن. Alhamdulillah, has been published in 12, in another edition, 13 volumes, 12, 13 volumes. Has been translated into English, all, yeah, so you can check this. Has been translated into French, into Russian, yeah, one of the Russian scholars, Muslim scholars, translated much of these, and another one completed. He said, rahimahullah, at the beginning, وشرطي في هذا الكتاب, so my method through this book, إضافة الأقوال إلى قائلها. So I always attribute the opinions and the saying to the scholars. So we wouldn't say, for example, quote an opinion without the scholar who said this. والأحاديث إلى مصنفيها. And then not same as we've seen with other type of tafsirs. where they narrate a hadith using their own chains. No. But they said this is in Al-Bukhari, this is in Muslim, this is in Al-Muwatta. So that's his criteria actually at the beginning. He was one of his book actually one of the few books that we don't, it doesn't contain much Israeliyat, which these stories from the Torah, from the New Testament and the Old Testament. Usually you'll find these in books of Tafsirs, particularly when it comes to the stories of the nations before us, because we don't have much information, so we rely on these stories, on these books, especially most of them comes from those companions who converted, who became Muslims but from a Jewish background, like Abdullah ibn Salam radiallahu anhu, and Ka'b al-Ahbar radiallahu anhu, those scholars who used to tell stories, a lot of stories from their own books. Al-Qurtubi used to avoid all this. Yeah? And maybe because it's mainly book of fiqh. So that's his book. He's got another book, amazing book on التذكرة بأحوال الموتى وأمور الآخرة. He wrote a book on what we call the wa'az, reminding people about the hereafter. And such an amazing book. And he wrote this book again because of his experience because he said what I saw in Qurtuba is a scene of the hereafter. Is something that the akhirah is coming. This is the last days in this, because that's the calamities. It's like what our brothers now and sisters in Gaza are experiencing this genocide on a daily basis, every moment, every second. For them, this is a qiyamah for them. If someone would remember this after 1 year, after 2 years, after a decade, after 30 years, they cannot even recalling these, telling these poetry actually, and such. So he, rahimahullah, wrote this book, التذكرة بأحوال الموتى والآخرة. He's got a book on Christianity, criticizing the teaching of Christianity, which is quite, again, this is a discipline, but the Andalusian were very good on this. They wrote a lot of books on criticizing the New Testament and the Old Testament, analyzing the whole two testaments, which is Ibn Hazm started these and many scholars. So that's Imam al-Qurtubi, rahimahullah. As I said, this is has been translated into English. But if someone would ask, do I start with Al-Qurtubi or Al-Arabi? Al-Arabi is easy, concise actually, but it's easy. It's only in 4 volumes, while Al-Qurtubi it is in 3 times more than this, so 12 volumes. And there are other books on this. So we finish with this very briefly, and another type, that's those tafsirs that related to the language itself, to the Arabic language only, and mainly is about what they call i'rab al-Quran. So we have many on this, which they come. What is i'rab? Is to come to every single ayah, every single verse, and to analyze the verses from a grammatical point of view. So you say, what is alhamdu? Alhamdu is a noun, is a subject, and you have to give the case, is mawfu'. And alhamdu lillahi, so we have li. li is preposition to, and Allah is noun, and so on. Rabbi is a noun, al-alamin is idaf, and so on. So we have scholars who dedicate a whole tafsir, a whole genre to these kind of tafsir. They call i'rab al-Quran, starting from Alhamdulillah to Surah Al-Nas, word by word, letter by letter. And especially those who study Arabic and study in Arabic, Quranic Arabic, the grammar, this is very useful for them. And why? Because when it comes to the qira'at, why the qira'at are different, maybe it's because of the language itself. So you may say, وَامْرَأَتُهُ حَمَّالَةُ الْحَطَبِ حَمَّالَةُ وَامْرَأَتُهُ حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ. So if you say حَمَّالَةُ, you have to give a grammatical explanation here. If you say حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ, you have to give explanation. Why with tu, why with ta? And both of them are authentic, mutawatira. Both of them qira'at sam'iyya. We've seen this when we talk about the 7 qira'at. So here, these books, they analyze these aspects of the qira'at. The first one we know is Imam al-Nahas, who died in 338. So it's quite very early, 338 of Hijrah. So our scholars, they turn to this field, which is highlighting the i'rab of the Quran, writing a whole commentary, a whole tafsir, based on the grammatical points from the very early stages. We have Imam Makki ibn Abi Talib also, who's got a book on i'rab al-Quran, all of this. One of the latest books, which is in about 10 volumes, is i'rab al-Quran wa Bayanu, which is one of the great Syrian scholars, Sheikh Muhyiddin Tadwis again. This is at very high level, obviously. If you don't study Arabic, and if you don't specialize in the grammar itself, there is no need to and this is why I was actually looking if we have any translation for this. No, nothing. Because it's very, very technical, and there is no rationale to translate this into English, because we're dealing with the Arabic language. Why are you saying this is a noun, this is an adjective? And we do have also a good website which based on this, I gave you this last year, Quran Corpus. So if you write Quran and then Corpus, C-O-R-P-U-S, you'll find the same approach. So if you, I'm not sure if I have the internet, I can show you. This is actually one of our brothers, Qais rahimahullah. He did his PhD on computer sciences and programming and all this. So he decided to work on such projects. So taking these books of i'rab al-Quran and translate this into a software, into a platform where it can benefit the English speakers. And he did this PhD at Leeds University 15 years ago, and his work actually was well received. This is Quran Corpus. And he died, rahimahullah, this last year from cancer. He was very young, 42 years old, I think, 41 years old. But he left, subhanAllah, Sadaqah Jariyah. Such amazing. So if you, for example, you go to word by word here, yeah, if you go to word by word, then, for example, you go to Bismillah, and you can see Bismillah is P, which is preposition, and An is noun. And here it gives you actually the cases, those who announce the cases in the Arabic grammar. And it comes to Allahi, it's a noun, yeah, of Allah. And the translation here, and Ar-Rahman is adjective. So that's quite very helpful in terms of those maybe who are quite obsessive maybe with the grammar. It can be beneficial. But such a great, and also I told you last 2 years ago when we did this project of the themes, and even if you go, which is based on the root system, so if you go here on, for example, verb, and if I want to find the Bahatha, for example, and you'll find that it gives you exactly the word which based on the root system. فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ غُرَابًا يَبْحَثُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Such a good project, rahimahullah, he did for the Muslim community and for everyone. So that's tafsir based on the language itself. We have other tafsirs which is quite unique. That one of them is by Imam al-Biqai, and the Muslim scholar. This is what we call tanasub. Remember, we talked about these once. And always we touch on these. What is tanasub? What's the relationship, we said, between the beginning of the surah and the end of the surah? And what is the relationship between munasaba, between the end of the surah and the following surah? Imam al-Biqai, by the way, Abu Bakr al-Arabi, the one who wrote the Quran, he wrote a book on this. And he said, because I could not find students dedicated to this knowledge, and then he burned actually the book, it was quite nervous, and he burned the book. So we don't have his book. But al-Biqai wrote actually his tafsir based on this. Sometimes he may twist the meaning to get a relationship. But in general, this is an amazing book. And Imam al-Biqai in Tanasub, they call Tanasub. Suyuti also wrote a little bit, but here, and we gave many examples many times here. And one of the great contemporary scholars who touch on these is the Iraqi Arabic scholar, Sheikh Muhammad Fadl Samarra'i. He's got a very famous program, Lamasat Layaliya, in Arabic, unfortunately. He's one of the great scholars of Arabic, but he touched upon these quite a lot. So when we say, for example, the end of Surah Al-Qamar, إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي جَنَّاتٍ وَنَهَرٍ فِي مَقْعَدِ صِدْقٍ عِنْدَ مَلِكٍ مُقْتَدِرٍ. This is the end of the Surah Al-Qamar. What comes after Surah Al-Qamar is Surah Al-Rahman. So it starts with Al-Rahman, Allama Al-Quran. So if you say إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ, the pious, the mu'minun, believers, فِي جَنَّاتٍ وَنَهَرٍ, that's in the hereafter, في مقعد صدق عند مليك مقتدر. Who is the Malik al-Muqtadir? Ar-Rahman, which the answer is in the following surah. And many, Biqai touch on this, mashallah. So that's one of the unique style of tafsir. We don't have much on this. Then we have the contemporary tafsirs, the tafsir al-mu'asira. So now we jump to nowadays. One of the great tafsirs in this 20th century is Tafsir al-Manar, Al-Manar, Al-Manar by Sheikh Muhammad Rashid Rida. Muhammad Rashid Rida, who died 1354 Hijrah, which is 1931. He's a Syrian scholar, a great Syrian scholar, and then he moved to Egypt, and he started there, rahimahullah. His book is incomplete, actually, Tafsir. He stopped at Salt Yusuf, and he died, rahimahullah. So we have Tafsir al-Manar. We have Tafsir Sheikh Abdurrahman Sa'di, which is also not a very large tafsir. Sheikh Abdurrahman Sa'di, one of the great scholars, rahimahullah, from Saudi Arabia. And he wrote this book as facilitating these for the folks, for the awam, not for the level ilm. But he, rahimahullah, when you read Tafsir Sheikh Sa'di, you'll find some opinions and some insights that you cannot find in another tafsir. We do have Sheikh al-Shanqiti, we mentioned Sheikh Shanqiti, Abwab al-Bayan, the lights of the Bayan, في إيضاح القرآن بالقرآن, so tafsir al-Quran using the Quran. This is the great Mauritanian scholar, Sheikh Muhammad al-Amin Shanqiti, is from Mauritania, from the great city of knowledge, Shanqiti. This is why you find all these people Shanqiti. We have many Shanqitis. And then he moved to Mecca. He settled there in Mecca, and most of these scholars took from him in Mecca, 30s and 40s. So he wrote this book, rahimahullah. Sheikh on this, his methodology is to use the Quran to do tafsir Quran by going to another verse. So if you say Ar-Rahman, he may look at, if we have another verse explaining what is Ar-Rahman, he would bring it. But he may actually touch also on fiqh too much. Because he's faqih, he's scholar, he's a great Maliki scholar. So he touched, instead of focusing on this, sometimes you find Sheikh going back to his own expertise, which is he's faqih by default, rahimahullah. And the language also. And those scholars from Mauritania are unique, because you find scholars, they can memorize the whole dictionary of 15 volumes. They memorize it, not word by word, letter by letter. They cannot mix. If you wow and fa, they don't mix. It's wow, it's wow. And this is, it's like by default, their ability to memorize is beyond imagination. Beyond imagination. Especially those people from Shanghai. And it's quite the way we mentioned at the Muslim before, and how they started the Arabic language. This is the same. These people are the same. They start with the language itself. And in fact, when they teach their kids, you know who starts teaching them the Quran? Not men, women. They usually start with their mothers, with their aunties, with their sisters, to teach them the Quran, to teach them the Arabic language. When they finish the Quran with their women, and then at the age of 12, they go to men. This is exactly how it works in Shanqif for centuries, till now. And some of them, You ask him, I met one of the few, and I asked him, when did you memorize the Quran? His answer was, I cannot remember. He said, I guess maybe 6 years old. But he said, I cannot remember when I memorized it. I found myself repeating with my mother, with my grandmother, and so on. So this is why Sheikh Muhammad Amin al-Shanqiti, when it comes to the language, and we have one of our few who actually took from him in the Haram in Mecca, and he said, when you hear Sheikh Muhammad Amin al-Shanqiti citing hundreds of lines of poetry just to explain one word in the Quran, it's amazing. It's amazing. He was explaining the ayn. What's the different meaning of ayn? And he quoted actually 32 meanings of ayn. Not only the eye. We know the ayn is the eye, but he actually mentioned 32 different meanings. And every single meaning, he was telling me that he's actually proved by some lines from poetry. So that's Sheikh Muhammad Amin Shaqir. So you see Sheikh going back to Ayat al-Ahkam more than what he dedicated to himself. The last and the most important tafsir in the 20th century is the tafsir of the great Imam, Tunisian Imam, Sheikh Muhammad al-Tahir ibn Ashur. Ibn Ashur, A-S-H-U-R, Ibn Ashur. Ibn Ashur also is a family of knowledge. They inherited knowledge for 4 centuries, and they used to be the grand imam of the famous institution Zaytuna in Tunisia. Sheikh Muhammad Tahir Ashur, he wrote his tafsir. It took him 30 years to finish it, in 30 volumes. So if you buy Tahrir wa Tanwir, called At-Tahrir wa Tanwir. If you buy Tahrir wa Tanwir, then you need, it's 30 volumes. 30, yeah? And there is some brothers are working now on the first juz, to translate the first juz into English. A project in my last, at least 30 years. But really, the first juz is, so in every juz in one volume. And what is also unique to Muhammad Ashur is he touched upon fiqh, language, but his main expertise also is the language. Also, he was faqih, and he was known as expert in the objectives of Sharia, maqasid Sharia. He wrote a book on this. We have other books of tafsir. This is again an overview on these, because we don't have much to finish. We have only three lessons, and then we have to conclude these on the away and the line. This is why we're there. So next week we touch on the translations of the Quran and how we started. And the week after, we will mention some of the Western scholarship on the Quran. How these Western scholars, how these Western universities started studying the Quran in terms of translation, criticizing the Quran, a lot of things. So we may touch on these because it's something relevant to us. We live here and we have to answer many questions on these. And then we'll finish, we'll conclude, inshallah. So it's only 3 lessons and we'll finish. Next week I'll be away Thursday and Friday, so we will have the session on Wednesday. Yeah. So not Friday next week, but it will be Wednesday, inshallah. Because I will be away.
There's a program on Wednesday here.
Huh?
There's a program here on Wednesday.
Wednesday. Well, Tuesday.
You have to confirm with them.
Yeah, when someone tell me 3. Ahmed, do we have anything on Wednesday? 3 Wednesday, no? After the Maghrib. So we have something on after Maghrib. Nothing, yeah, after Maghrib. So we stop here, and if you have any questions, yeah, go ahead.
You say about translation Quran in Quran. Well, you say in between ayah and ayah, the meaning is different. So how can you translate Quran in Quran? Well, you say between one ayah, even the same ayah, but it's the same meaning. It has the same meaning.
We'll talk about this next week, but it's translation is tafsir. This is because the translator he adopts a meaning, because there are different meanings. Why do we have different translations? Because you understand the verse according to certain tafsirs. So you say, this is, I'll go for this. But in other translation, we maybe consult in other tafsirs, may go to another meaning, another word, another term to use this. So the translation itself is a tafsir. And this is why you may have different interpretation and different translations, and you may prefer to go for one word. I may go to a different word, not this one. And again, it's also we'll talk about this next week a lot about the problems of translation itself, because one of the issues is that certain words is difficult to translate them into other languages. Not only English, but even some near languages, like it's very difficult to translate al-haya. They translate as modesty. It's actually, it carries more than modesty. It's translating sujood by Hussein. It doesn't reflect this. Again, sometimes you do this because you take the context of the Western reader. Because if you say the Western reader, هو الذي أنزل, he sent down, they may not get this sent down. Again, always as translator, you have to take the context of your audience. Because you don't confuse the audience. If they don't have this in their culture, and you use a word or a term that is not relevant to their culture, then here there is a problem. You're not conveying the message. And this is why, for example, for me, the best translation in English is Muhammad al-Qibtal himself. Why Muhammad al-Qibtal? Because he is a novelist. He was someone who used to write novels in English. So in terms of English literature, he's amazing. He's eloquent in the English language. I mean, I cannot translate because English is still my second language. And even if it's your first language, and you don't go beyond the language itself, you don't touch upon the deep meaning of the language itself, you cannot choose the right word. This is why you find someone who's struggling and puts too many footnotes down at this means, then you'll be distracted. You read translation there, and you have to read 8-10 lines, footnote down to explain. This is not translation, this is tafsir. But you need to put just a pocket like this for tafsir. You need someone who's an amazing knowledge in the language itself, in the Arabic, and knowing these tafsirs, and the language itself, the targeting. He translated into English, and again, Muhammad al-Qibtal, because he was a novelist himself. You have someone like Muhammad, but again, I'm not going to mention some translations, but you take other translations, it's just corrupted in whether in French or English or Spanish or even in other languages. Yeah. I think we finish Adhan time. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك سبحان ربك رب العزه عما يصفون سلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين السلام عليكم ورحمه الله